family, what is going on? Let me hurry up and cut my music, turn the music. All right. I ain't mean to get so hostile with y'all. I'm sorry. Look, y'all, it is another great day. Happy, what is it? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another great edition of the Arrington Gavin podcast, a show where you just kick back and have a quick conversation with your boy, your homie, Arrington Gavin. Again, coming to you with new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and also 1 p.m. via YouTube, our YouTube channel, R Smooth Club Media. Also, you can tune into our Facebook page, R Smooth Club, as well as R Smooth Club on X, formerly known as Twitter. If I got to keep on saying formerly known because it's just X. What is this, like your ex girl? No, X. So I'm excited, man, for this show because this is all about sports, y'all. All about sports. You know, we're still in the we're in a good spot right now in the NFL season. NBA season, preseason has started, so a lot of great conversations that I want to bring up, man. I'm excited to have my good friend, Mr. Brendan Abban, who is a sports writer. He's also host of the KBR Sports. So please look him up, support the platform, man. This man is a true expert in sports, and I'm excited to just catch his eye on some stuff, right? I want to get his opinion and thoughts on a few trending stories happening in the sports world. Also, again, this podcast is presented by Rugged Evolution Beard Care. Rugged is the new smooth. So for more information about Rugged, hey, you can go check that out at ruggedevo.com. So without further ado, I'm gonna get my good friend Mr. Brendan Abban. Let me get Brendan on. Let's see if he's on. What's goody, boss? What's goody?
My guy, how are we doing?
Man, I'm doing awesome. Look, I take it you a Lakers fan because I'm looking at them colors right there, sir. That setup is a little tough back there. Got Kobe. I see you, man. I see you.
I had to. I got Kobe on the one side. I got Magic. I got Magic on
I
the other. You got to do it right with both the legends.
absolutely, man. I absolutely. Look, well, speaking of Magic, man, how do you think the Commanders are doing at this point? You think it was a great uplift for for their season, having a new owner, a new vibe? I mean, how do you think Magic's doing right now as a new owner with the Washington Commanders?
I think I think they're doing a pretty good job. I think for how early we are in the season and from
Hmm.
the time of when they took over, it takes a while. It takes a while, obviously, for that type of management to really have a long lasting impact. Like we're gonna still see the effects of the previous regime, at least for the next year to 2 years. It takes a while for new ownership to come in, get they didn't pick this coach, they didn't pick the general
Mm,
manager, and so on, right? So this management structure that the Commanders have isn't under this new regime, but you can change up the culture, you can change up what the standard is of what is accepted. Like Magic's a known winner in whatever place he's been a part of, maybe
absolutely.
outside of the Lakers, but or at least in the management terms, when he was the Lakers vice president. But as a player, Magic's won 5 championships. So,
Mm,
and even his time as one of the top executives for the Dodgers.
that's
So
right. That's right. I forgot about that.
yeah, so Magic is a known winner. He knows what that culture looks like. So you hope him as well as that ownership group comes in,
Yeah.
and you see that the Commanders are a way more competitive team in
Mm,
this season. Even if they do lose some of these close games, it's you want to see that your team competes. You don't want to feel like your home team, because that's where you feel like you have something to build off of. When your team is getting blown out week from week, like I couldn't have imagined being a Lions fan the year they went 0-16,
oh my gosh. How can you
right?
forget that? I think I remember like it was yesterday and it was just like, wow. Like y'all ain't win
Yeah,
a game. I mean, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the coach still held on to his position after that season. I don't think
yeah,
they fired him after that.
because the goal was to tank, right?
Mm,
And so
mm,
it's something to be said when your culture it encourages tanking. When your
mm-hmm,
culture
mm-hmm.
is built around, hey, we're just going to chalk the season to try and get a new draft pick. For one, you're not going to be able to lure players. You're not going to be an attractive spot for coaches. I mean, granted, if a coach needs a job, a coach is going to go where they can get a job.
Exactly.
But when you have a culture that, even if you do want those high draft picks, like right now, I bet many Washington fans would love to just have that staple quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
you would love to have that guy that you can believe in as a mainline quarterback, like the Jets thought they had. But I think that when you have a culture that the bar is to be a competitive team, you have many avenues that you can build off of that. Then once you all you need from that point is the talent, because then the
Mm.
culture is set.
And you know what, man? It's funny you brought that up because I've always hated that strategy of okay, the teams that bombed the season prior, oh y'all gonna have a line to get some of the best picks because really would you say okay that culture or that strategy aspect that hurts say the up and coming star entering into the league because I don't know how many times I can remember seeing Heisman Trophy winners never being that top tier player, in the NFL. I mean, we can go from Matt Leinart to RG3. I mean, well, I will say even though he had to technically give his trophy back, but Reggie Bush became that's my dog right there. I was always a Reggie Bush fan, but you see a lot of star Tim Tebow, right? So
Yeah.
you see these guys that enter in the league, they really start, they join an awful team because first things first is like, okay, look, we're gonna draft a young guy. He's gonna be he's gonna be our leader. He might just be 21, 22 years old, but he's gonna lead a full-on organization. It's a new environment. And all of a sudden, oh, he does bad. Now they start blaming him. And it's like, wait a minute, like it's just I've always never cared for that, for that strategy. Because in all honesty, a lot of the top players in the NFL or in any league, they're not high, high prospect draftees, like first rounders. There, some of them might be in round 5, but they turn out to because their energy. They're like, okay, look, I know every opportunity I need to get, I'm gonna show up and show out. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing up that bringing up the the culture aspect and stuff. And speaking of culture, because or well, actually, before we go into that, I would love to continue to give you a quick interview. What got you so passionate about sports? Like I mentioned in your your bio during the intro, sports writer, host of KBR Sports. Man, where did the passion come for sports for you?
I'd say the passion came honestly because I played them myself, and just naturally being competitive with my siblings. I think sports is probably the best outlet that you can be competitive in, especially with your siblings from a standpoint of not just beating each other up. But and sports, I think sports teach you values, team values that before you probably get into the workforce that no
Mm,
other form of activity or whatever can teach you. Right? I think there are very limited things because a lot of things you can just do on your own. You can
hmm
learn by yourself, but sports, particularly team sports, you pick up so many values in terms of perseverance, teamwork, organization, structure that you just can't get from anything else. Maybe in today's age of video games, you can get that when you play on teams with other people, right? But
True, true.
sports as a whole, I think that's really what started it for me. And then just watching ESPN, and it's so funny because people talk about. I've seen Stephen A. Smith going back and forth with someone like a Dan Lebitard about what Stephen A. and Skip did to the sports industry, right? And
Mm,
the debate shows like First Take. I mean, even though First Take wasn't the first version of it, I think First Take was First and 10, and it was cold pizza, and then it evolved into First Take. But and that's not even the first show like that. But I will say, for my era, my generation per se, I think it was watching shows like that that got
mm,
me really into. I got really into the arguing about, oh well, this person is the goat, or this person is, this guy's not that great, or something like that. And I got interested in it because I wanted to put my own spin on those type of things, because
mm.
I felt like, for example, the classic Jordan and LeBron debate, it's a debate you could have to the end of time, right?
Exactly. It will never end.
Exactly, but I think it gets more interesting when you start asking the question, well, what okay, so in my case personally, or for anybody, right? If
Mm,
you believe Jordan's number 1, well, break down why you think Jordan's number 1, and why he's not number 2. It's like those are two different things, right? When you have to
mm,
explain
mm,
why someone's number 1 and not number, and versus why they're not number 2. A la LeBron, if you think LeBron's number 2, when you explain why someone is the second greatest player of all time, you're explaining why they're better than pretty much every other player that's played in the field.
that's
But then
true.
when you're explaining why they're not number 1, those are two different tasks you have to do. And I felt like I observed that aspect of sports debate that I never saw people really getting into. It was always like a comparison of the two players and
Hmm
why they were always butting heads. But I feel like there's a way you can talk about sports that doesn't require the necessary like breaking down of an athlete to prop
and
up
that
another.
it, and that's very true. And I've always thought the same way. About shows like First Take. Where is it one? Pardon the interruption. Wait, no, am I
Yeah,
right? I
pardon
think.
instruction is another one. Yeah,
Yep. And uh, I've always looked at sports as the outlet of bringing so many cultures together, right? You
Yeah.
can have honestly friendly debates in sports because at the end of the day, it's like sports. We get competitive, but different from actually debate. Political debates and sports debates, totally different thing. Like sometimes you might not talk to that individual after a political debate, but after you have a sports debate, you're gonna be like, all right, man, let's watch this game because it's more enjoyable when I say if I have friends of the opposing team if we're watching a football game or anything like that. It's just it's more fun, it's more competitive, and
Yeah,
it's
for
very
sure.
enjoyable. But no, man, because I know you are, like I said, you are a true expert when it comes to sports. That's why I'm excited to have you on because there is so many there's so many like
I
topics I
always
want to kind
appreciate
of.
that you call me an expert. I appreciate.
Yeah,
I try my
man,
best
hell
to know
yeah.
about it because the funny thing is, I love one thing that Stephen A. Smith says is that he always says, "I know I'm great. I'm great because I know I'm not." Right? And I always love that phrase because to me, like when you say expert, to me, I feel like I know nothing. Right? And so, like if I were to stand in the same room and talk basketball with Kevin Durant, I know
Mhm.
nothing. But then it's funny when you say expert because if I sit there, I can explain everything from a to a T to like
Mhm.
my mom, and I can simplify it so where she understands the sport about. So it's just funny when you say, I guess the context affects it.
You know what? I'm coming from a fan of KBR Sports, so I'm coming as as a fan. This man knows his stuff. So and I have I come from a sports family as well. My father, he was a All American football player in college. He did a few years in the league, in
Nice.
different leagues. My wife, she was a collegiate swimmer. I stopped on the high school level, but I will say like when I went to college, I was friends with all my friends were athletes. It was some moments where teachers were like, "Were you an athlete?" Like it's just I've always loved the competitiveness, but I always knew, hey, the Lord has something planned for me differently. I'm like, yeah, that's a whole different league right there for me.
Yeah.
But I'm always still I love sports. I love sports commentary, like you mentioned, Stephen A. Smith. I'm a huge fan of Stephen A. It's funny because my wife is more First Take. I was an Undisputed fan. Now I
Oh,
haven't been on it lately with the new
Newcast.
I mean, I still watch it, but it's just it will never be the Skip and Shannon, show. It's always it's
Yeah.
getting hard to adjust now. Richard Sherman, awesome dude. Keyshawn, of course, been doing it for a long time. Michael Irvin, Skip Bayless, like I mean, those guys are experts, but it's like First Take, I think is still. I mean, that's the show to beat. That's always going to be the show to beat.
Yeah.
But I want to bring up, Deion Sanders. I feel as though Deion Sanders has, for one, not just had the biggest impact in the past like 2-3 years in college football, but just let's just say in sports, right? So we can backtrack of the athlete he was when he was, of course, in college, went to the pros. The man became a two sport professional athlete, which I don't
Yeah.
think anybody has done that, since at least
To
succeeded,
that
right?
level.
to
Yeah.
that level. Two Super Bowl rings. I think he did like 7 years in the major leagues. He could have had a long career then. Then he became a successful analyst. Now he went into coaching, and I mean, like, what to your mind, man? What has Deion like? Has Deion really changed the whole culture in a sense to just sports alone? And then the second question will be, what's the impact he brought on college sports?
I think Dion, like we noted before, I think the culture is the biggest thing. Dion has brought that unapologetic, you
Mm,
be yourself type of vibe to every place he's been to, whether it was Jackson State, whether it's Colorado. He's brought that and he's been unapologetically himself and he's led unapologetically the way that he leads and has embroidered that onto his teams. And I think it's one of those things that Dion sees his team and his kids as the best kids and the best team that you can field out there. And he
mm,
talks about them in that way. And I think it's one of those things that we don't get that from coaches. We're used to the old guard of the Nick Saban and like those type of coaches coming in and kind of just, I guess, putting your head down and just doing the work and then hope
mm,
and then, you lead your team to win. But Dion's the guy that's gonna bring on the market. He brings marketing, the cachet, and he brings that. I don't want to. I don't. It's not the same necessarily because I made a video not too long ago where I said Dion was having a Floyd Mayweather like effect on Colorado.
mm.
And when I said that, some people were like, some people didn't get what I was saying. Some people did get what I was saying. Essentially, I guess to eschew any confusion about it, when I say that is that Floyd Mayweather, just to talk about him real quick, what he
Mhm.
was able to accomplish in the boxing world was unprecedented. He pretty much he became his own promoter in a sense,
Yep.
and bowed out of having to be at the behest of places like Top Rank and Showtime and stuff like that. And he really was his own, like Mayweather Promotions became his own thing.
Yep.
And he was a walking brand because not he talked so much and he put himself out there so much that he became a villain in a sense that you wanted to watch fights. People who love Floyd Mayweather just for the fact that he was so good at what he did, you
Mhm.
wanted to watch to see if he could stay undefeated. And a lot of people wanted to watch just to see if he could get beat. So you bring Deion Sanders into the fold in that regard. The Colorado didn't have the benefit, at least up until they lost. They had the
Mhm.
benefit of being that undefeated team, right?
Mhm.
And they also had that, when Deion says, play my theme music, they had those type of things going on where, and you have the, Shador flashing the watch every single time they went. Those are things that they push against what people normally tell you in football and sports. Be humble, stay in your lane, whatever the case might be. Don't put yourself out there because then you have to go out there and back it up. But the
Mhm.
thing is, when you do put yourself out there, you put a target on your back, right? And that's when you have the Oregon coach giving an inspired speech before the game.
That's right.
I never saw a speech like that for any other team that Oregon has played. No other, not even teams in their own conference. Oregon has not amped up themselves to play a team like that, especially a team that is supposed to be way below them in terms of recruiting and
Yep.
talent, the whole nine. But Colorado came to town. We had to put them in their place, right? That
Mhm.
I think people saw that. There was a viral tweet for some lady that even said, Oregon was representing so much of us that wanted to shut up
Well,
Colorado.
and that's the funny thing though, because and you kind of the key word that at least I heard with that is us. Now I want
Yeah.
to ask, do you think a lot of his haters well, I won't say that, but I feel I don't know. I will always say this, and I mean, and I'm not saying this to to be
I,
race or any way,
do
but
you do you mind
let's
if
be
I
honest.
intervene real quick for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think I know where you're going, and it's not necessarily flatline a race thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's more. I think it's a culture thing.
Mm, mm,
There's a
mm.
specific culture, like, because you will find black and white and Hispanic and Asian that are comfortable on either side of the culture, right? But then
Absolutely.
there's also an old guard that believes the culture and how you lead a team should be led in a specific
I
type of
got you.
way.
A generation thing.
Exactly.
I
And
got you. I got you.
And so you see that generational push, but the thing is, when you see that young culture that really gravitates towards that,
Mm-hmm.
Dion's going to be able to recruit players, right? That's
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
part of the change that people are seeing is that, look, you can hate all that Dion's doing all you want, but the change that he's bringing, the culture he's bringing that young youthful culture that these players like, and they see, hey, I can be a part of that. I want to be a part of that, right? That's something
Mm-hmm.
cool to be a part of. You can be a part of, like, Colorado wasn't a team of any note a year ago, and now Colorado's getting prime time ESPN games. You
Well,
know,
I think if you even go back to when he went to Jackson State, like I mean, for me, he and I didn't go to an HBCU school, but I mean, I have family members that are graduates from there, friends that are graduates, and I know like the impact that he put on HBCUs was just
yeah,
unheard of because it's like, whoa, we already knew we didn't have to hear about his the salary. We already knew it wasn't to the level of like he's probably used of, but
yeah,
the impact that he brought to the city, the impact that he brought to the university, I mean, renovated stadiums, back to back SWAC titles, right?
yeah,
And a lot of the culture had really criticized him of leaving because they said, okay, this joker just left so he can get more money. Let's be honest. He said what he was going to accomplish. He only had but a 3-year contract. So it's like
yeah,
the man, majority of his contract, he succeeded. He succeeded expectations. And yeah, a lot of those guys, because Jackson State is not the same after he left. I mean, shocker. But like you had
yeah,
mentioned, a lot of the top prospects would love to play for Deion Sanders. I think that's why like a lot of coaches like Oregon is like trying to talk some junk or at least make a statement because he's like, look, y'all still better come over to Oregon. Don't go over there to Colorado because I knew a lot of those coaches that. I mean, I know a lot of those coaches are probably worried the fact that okay, Deion is now coaching our conference. Man, we about to lose some prospects.
yeah,
And what I love about how the way Deion is been kind of like documenting his practices, the speeches, having all the celebrities, all the flashiness to that era, yeah, it brings a target, but we're in the NIL era now. So it's
Yeah.
like to me, what he's doing is helping market his players to get paid. Because I was reading something about, I think his son, by next season, he'll be making almost $10 million in NILs as a college student. And I'm just like, it makes you want to like, man, maybe I should have, maybe if I should have, would have, could have. Because and it's funny because actually my brother-in-law, he's played professional. He's actually thinking about retiring, but he's played professional basketball. He actually did 4 years at UK.
Nice.
I think his senior year was when Caliprini came. He played with like DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, that group.
Oh, nice.
And he just says, man, if I was around here when we had that, because I mean, let's be honest, college sports is, in my opinion, I think more profitable, more marketable, and more popular than pros. As much as I love pros more, it's nothing like college football or college basketball, right? But seeing what Deion is doing, I mean, their current record is 4-3, not bad, because after that loss that they took from Oregon, I mean, they played a higher ranked squad in USC, lost by just 8 points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not bad
It was a
at
comeback
all.
too.
That is
Yeah.
not bad at all. But again, I think Deion has so many haters like that want to see him lose.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a oh gosh, it's a sports guy named Jason Whitlock. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
Jason Whitlock.
man.
But let me
I
tell you
don't remember
something.
him.
One of the biggest haters right now, at least I know that's more vocal, right? And he's one of those ones that is talking about the generational thing, like being humble, this and any other. Deion's never been offensive to any of his opponents, even though a player did a nasty hit on his player, he's like, no, y'all do not need to be sending this guy no death threats. That's
Yeah.
uncalled for. This He's never been that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So again, to see people want to see Deion lose, I'm like, what for? He's, for one, he's prime time. That's not remember, this is prime time we're talking about. Prime will always be prime. He's Coach Prime. He's not even Deion anymore. He's Coach Prime. And you bring the comparison of Money Mayweather. Like, I'm a fan of Mayweather as far as, just he's one of the greatest boxers, of all time at this level. Marketing wise, yes, he is rolling in the dough. Can he go a bit overboard with the stacks and stacks of cash? Absolutely. I don't even want to show $5 in public. I'm like, I gotta put that in my pocket. That man's showing 500,
Yeah. Floyd takes it to the
500,000.
next level.
Exactly. But do you think going back to Deion, how do you think this season's look? I know it's kind of early, but do you think Deion is kind of changed the culture in college football right now, being the head coach, and that's very vocal and flashy? Do you think he's kind of changed up the culture to say, okay, look, other universities or other programs might kind of take notes and be like, hey, look, we might need to take notes from this guy?
I think it's going to be some time still until you see it starting to shift a little bit from the attention being paid to his team. But what you want to see is that team win in line with that, because then when that happens, then you open a pathway for other coaches who also want to follow that similar path. Because yes, it's good and well that, I mean, at the end of the day, people only care about the money, right? So the money is what matters. And at the end of the day, if Deion's bringing viewership, and that type of leadership is bringing viewership, and people, and number one, players are coming and following that, then yeah, you're going to see way more schools are going to be more about that, right? He's going to open a new pathway for coaches who want to lead in that manner, who want to bring a culture and establish a culture in a similar sense to what Deion's established. But I think the thing that's still most important is winning, though, because what you always got to remember, when something's fresh and new, everybody's happy to support it. But then after some time, if you don't really move or you don't elevate, then you start to have more and more naysayers start to, swell up. So if Deion can do this and keep Colorado as and make Colorado one of the best programs in college sports, just because he's showing that the talent, he's also recruiting top flight talent as well, then I think you're going to cement that difference and that change that Deion is subtly making in college football.
I like it. Before we move on to another topic, man, I would like to ask too, kind of going back more with Deion, when he announced that he was taking a job to Colorado, leaving Jackson State. Were you were you like, kudos to Deion? Did you see like why people could get frustrated? Like, what was your first initial like reaction when you heard about that?
I think when I first heard about it, I wasn't really upset about it personally because
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem at the time was that you heard a lot of conflicting reports, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Dion was talking out on one side saying that he was made a lot of promises by the school saying they would pay for the stadium, they would pay to renovate the stadium, to improve the stadium, improve the training facilities, all these things, and that was part of his reason for being there.
Mm-hmm.
And that those promises, like he wanted to enact the change that I just described at Jackson State, and
Yeah.
but you need that type of investment. You need that level of investment from the school and the program itself to get to that level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think people want to follow Dion, they want to follow that culture, but you also want to go to the best facilities you can to do that. And
Gotcha.
if Colorado's willing to make those investments, and as they've shown they are, then that's where you're willing to go to try and now make that the place that you make a change at. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're at a program that maybe wasn't making the same level of investment and maybe backtracked on a couple of things, then you're like, well, I can't, as much as I want to be here and finish the mission's got to continue somewhere else. And so I kind of understand where Dion's mindset was. Granted, that's a perspective that's heavily influenced with the perspective of what Dion had to say on that thing. Obviously, the
Mm-hmm.
school had a different perspective as well. So I I think that was really my take from that situation.
Gotcha. No, man, no. Definitely curious because I think the conversation will always come about is, okay, if I'm a top tier prospect, am I gonna go to HBCU school or PWI, PWI school, right? So I think that it will always, I'm still happy for Dion. I'm like, no, again, Dion did what he said he was gonna do. No way in the world. I was like, man, I'm dang. But I will say that I can see people's point of view as far as like, okay, how now what's the impact going to happen with HBCUs? Is more pro athletes, or more again, perfect, high. Well, no, there's a lot of popular players that would love to coach a squad. I remember hearing about Ricky Williams talking
Yeah.
about he would love to coach a HBCU school. That's if they allowed the the trees on campus because
Yeah.
Ricky a fan of them trees, man. He a fan of them trees, but
Ricky's in the clouds, man.
he's in the clouds for real. He's in the clouds for real. But I do think that hopefully with Dion put in the HBCU, I hope it will kind of continue to, because it's not up to him to continue that movement. Somebody has to follow and repeat itself, because we always will say, okay, they can, hey, if I go to a ODU football game and I go to a Norfolk State football game, what's the capacity? What's the crowd level going to be, right? What
Yeah.
am I expecting competition level and stuff like that? So just just curious to get your point of view on that one, man. But I truly appreciate that. Okay, moving on to a new one. Staying in football, going in the pros now. So the New York Jets, right? New York
Yeah.
Jets, during the preseason, they were so excited because they're like, we just acquired one of the best quarterbacks in the league. We got Aaron Rodgers coming in town. A lot of hoopla, a lot of publicity going on with that. They even had the Hard Knocks with the New York Jets going on, which I called it Aaron Rodgers reality show, because all they were doing was documenting Aaron Rodgers.
Pretty much.
They ain't care about anybody else but A-Rod.
Yeah.
And
Pretty much.
so all that hype, man, and after 4 short plays, season's over. Man's
Yeah.
39 years old. Maybe I think he might have turned 40 yet, but I know he was 39 at the time that injury happened. Torn Achilles, out for the season. First question I'll ask is, do you think this is it for Aaron Rodgers, NFL career wise?
Personally, no. And the reason why I say no is because I think it was like a week or two after he tore it, or 3 weeks maybe. I might be misremembering the timeline specifically, but there was a report that was talking about him coming back for the playoffs. And I feel as though if you don't, a report like that doesn't happen if you're not trying to come back and play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not even for just this season, but I think also when it comes to next season, possibly, because the reason why I view it that way is because I think Aaron, when you look back on all Aaron's Packers teams,
Mm-hmm.
literally the one team that he had that had a top 10 defense on both ends of the football, they won the Super Bowl. Ever since then, Aaron Rodgers has not had that caliber of a defense on his team every single time he's suited up for the Packers. Now he finally gets that caliber of defense. The Jets were, I think, top 6 defense last year.
I was about to say top 6 or top 7. Yep.
Yeah, they're one of the best defenses in the league. So he had it all on both sides. He had a running game with Brees Hall, and you brought in I always mess up. Is there Darren Cook or
Darius?
Dalvin
Well,
Cook?
it was
Dalvin Cook.
now.
Cook.
Is that the one from Minnesota? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they signed Dalvin Cook from Minnesota. So you bring in Dalvin Cook. You have Brees Hall. You got Sauce Gardner. You have Garrett Wilson as well. You have all these players on offense.
They even brought in one of his cats from Green Bay, Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb is I think he's, not a starter, but he's on the squad.
And they brought in Alan Lazard as well. So they were bringing in all these weapons that were lining up so that he could finally have that team he could depend on both sides of the football. And you've seen it. I mean, so far this season, I think his name's Saleh. The coach Saleh for the Jets. He even said we've been through the gauntlet of quarterbacks, and the fact that they're not winless speaks to how good that defense is. Obviously, Zach Wilson has done a good job of filling in for Aaron Rodgers, but that defense is so good. You only can imagine what would this team look like if Aaron Rodgers.
I was about to say, because Zach is struggling as a starter. Like Zach is the game that I'm seeing right now, he definitely is a true backup, but he just needs some more grooming because he's been making some really bad plays. I think recently when they played Philly, I mean, you just saw how when he got sacked and he had so much space to kind of cut, and then you see literally the same exact play happening with Jalen Hurts, but you see the difference between athleticism, how he just avoids that. So Zach is holding his own. I'm not gonna lie, I'm shocked the fact that you said you can you don't think it's the end. I will say this because I've been pretty vocal, and I'm not like the person to just pipe down on someone's career, but Rodgers has a ring. Rodgers 39 years old, almost 40. I think for an Achilles injury, I speculations having that if he might come back in the playoffs, I think that's trying to just help the Jets fan sanity right now, because I mean, hell, they had one Jets fan, that man lost his teeth out. He was so pissed. That man that just fell out. He said, "Oh." So it's just like the Jets really need some hope, going on. And Aaron Rodgers was that hope when they first signed him. I mean, they probably sold out season tickets and all that good stuff. And it's just, I just don't know at that age with that injury. And he's a mobile quarterback. I mean, the man relies on his feet fairly a lot. And it's and I hope I'm wrong. I hope to see him come back safely, injury free, and do come help out with the Jets. But I don't know, man. It's just it's back and forth for me with it. I'm leaning more towards this might be it. They had the whole stories about possible quarterbacks to bring on the Jets. They're talking about possibly getting in for a trade for Kirk Cousins from Minnesota. They've even brought up Colin Kaepernick, which that's another story I want to get on.
Let me ask you real quick one question, okay? Just to try and see how your perspective can gauge with this. If you knew that you were running a race, right, and they told you at the race you could win $1 million, and you got hurt with one lap left, and it was an Achilles injury, and they told you, look, you're even though you tore your Achilles, you're gonna struggle to what's it called? You're gonna struggle. The rehab is gonna be tough. You're at an older age. You're gonna have to start the whole marathon over again. But we still got that $1 million for you if you're willing to finish the race and do it again. Would you run the race again?
Man, see, Brendan, that's not fair. Because first of all, I'm broke, so hell yeah, I'll run the race. But two, that's actually you caught me on that one, because what I'm hearing is you can still compete, but the recovery process after the season's over is where you want to. So what you're saying is, yeah, he can come back, finish the season, and then get your rest on the off season, then possibly rehab it out. Good point, but again, that's not fair because, like I said, I'm broke. So $1 million. Let me tell you something.
Think about it this way: Aaron Rodgers is all time. I don't want to say he's championship broke, but look. I don't want to say it like that, He's not championship broke, but
My
for
man
how
said championship broke. He ain't broke, but he championship.
when okay, for the talent Aaron Rodgers has, for what people have perceived Aaron Rodgers to, been a disappointment. Aaron Rodgers has only been able to win one Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes has come in and win two. Right? Like that's
Ooh, wait. Oh, whoa. Okay, so, but check this out though. You have to give. So are you basically saying Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Pat Mahomes?
no, I'm not saying he's a better
Oh,
quarterback, but I think when it comes from a talent perspective, the only player
mm-hmm.
you might take above Aaron Rodgers from a talent perspective at the quarterback position is Patrick Mahomes. The
Yeah,
fact
yeah.
that Mahomes came in already has two rings. Mahomes, I mean, Aaron hasn't even gotten to the Super Bowl since he won.
That's
So
true. That's true.
Mahomes has been to three.
Well,
So
Mahomes at that time, man, you gotta be, and I've told people this so many times. When you have a receiver like Tyreek Hill, I can, man, as long as I can throw deep, I'm gonna be Hall of Fame status, and
you're
not
not wrong. I mean,
dropping the credit down from Pat Mahomes because Pat makes some spectacular plays, and then on top of
yeah,
that too, the man finished out a Super Bowl with a injured ankle too. So
yeah.
but because he probably had that mindset, hey, got $1 million at the end of that race, you got one more
Yeah.
lap, so he kept it moving. But I think weapons that KC had, he
They're
had
better
so
than
many.
Green Bay's.
Oh,
Yeah, they're better than Green Bay.
hell
Yeah, they're
yeah. I
better than
think
Green Bay.
he was just set up with so many great weapons. And then on top of that, Rodgers lost oh man, what's the wide receiver that's with the Raiders right now?
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, yeah. Lost Devontae Adams. It's hard trying to compete with players when you don't have a lot of weapons. That's why, like, I'm no crazy Eli Manning fan. I'm actually a Colts fan, so I was team, Peyton all day. But Eli, I was gonna be pissed if Peyton retired having one ring and his brother having two, because I'm like, oh, this is not gonna happen. This cannot happen. But
You see your perspective right there. You
yeah,
believe there's a gap between Peyton and Eli that's distinguishable, that you were going to be mad. If it was reversed, you wouldn't have any problem if
not at all.
obviously, like, right, if Peyton had two and Eli had one, because that's what the expectation was based on their performances throughout their
Mm-hmm.
career.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers has been one of the best regular season quarterbacks of all time, without
That's true.
question.
That's
And
true.
you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, his completion percentages, all those things. He looks amazing. I mean, you can make a case he is the best. You can make an argument for it in terms of talent. But then
Mm-hmm.
when you get to the postseason, that's when it's like, dude, well, you fall short of Brady by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have as many as Peyton, even though I think in that second one, obviously, Peyton wasn't the driving force of that championship with the Broncos. But
Oh
I
no,
think
no.
Peyton did just enough, right? So, but at the end of the day, you look at the career, you still count it as two Super Bowl rings. But then
Mm-hmm.
when you look at Aaron and you're like, well, the fact that you haven't gotten back to another one is a bit more glaring, because even when Peyton on those Colts teams, even when he, for example, lost to
The
the
Saints.
Saints, that was a predominantly offensive Colts team. Like, they were a predominantly offensive team throughout Peyton's tenure. I think you guys had a couple of good defenses.
We had the last time we had a great defense was the first ring that Peyton had, in my opinion,
Yeah,
because we had Bob Sanders, Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis. We had recently we had a gentleman, Leonard, number 5'3", I want to say, out of a HBC school. He's like, he's a headhunter. But we really never had been a defensive squad at all. We was always,
yeah.
mainly offense. But that's I never thought of it that way, to a sense of, and I think too, because it's like Pat Mahomes is like that person where it's like, okay, whoever's the most marketable player is always going to be kind of like the best player everybody's talking about, in my opinion.
Yes.
Pat's on was it All States or State Farm and all that stuff, because Aaron Rodgers was on on State Farm. I haven't seen him in a minute because I guess the injury.
Discount double check. I haven't.
Discount double check. That's right. So I haven't seen him in a minute, but that is interesting though. I think it will be a tough recovery, but hearing about possible trades, bringing in another quarterback, do you think it's even should they really think about bringing in another quarterback? Because again, Kirk Cousins, I hear a lot, Kirk Cousins. Could they afford a Kirk Cousins in your mind and a Aaron Rodgers?
No, I think that's a pipe dream. That's just something analysts are talking about to make it an interesting conversation about the Jets. They're not the Kirk Cousins thing. If they bring in Kirk Cousins, I think they're dumb. But if they trade the assets and the contracts to make it work, I mean, they're dumb if they do that. But because I think it's one of those things. The Jets, they were all in on Aaron Rodgers from a
Mm-hmm.
monetary standpoint, from a team talent. That team was built around Aaron Rodgers. There was no if, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
If you bring in another guy, yes, they're a proven veteran, sure, but they're not Aaron Rodgers. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
the only other, there's probably 5 quarterbacks you can bring in and replace him that you were expecting to perform, and none of them are available, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think at this point, you're hoping. I mean, the hope is you're not going to bank on Aaron Rodgers forever, right? You
Yeah.
At this point, you're hoping Zach Wilson can show you something. You picked him as high as you did for a reason. So you're hoping in that quarterback room, he picks up some things from learning from being in the quarterback room with Aaron Rodgers and develops. Because I don't think bringing in a rental or a guy that you know has no future with your franchise is pretty much a journeyman that really has no investment with that team. Like Aaron has an investment. Aaron has a reason as to what he like. Aaron's trying to get that million or that championship. Let's just say championship, but he's trying to get that championship to entrench himself amongst the best. He wants to be
Yeah.
better than Peyton. He wants to be
Mm-hmm.
better than Brady. I mean, Aaron. That's the reason why I think he's played this long. I think Brady. I mean, Aaron's openly said it. Brady inspired him to play into his 40s. He initially wasn't the plan, but when you see a guy like Brady do it
Yeah,
and be that
45,
good.
what, 42, 3 years old. I mean, it's insane seeing his expectancy. But I've told people, I'm like, when you haven't been hit in the playoffs ever in your career, you can play as many years. I mean, I'll just be honest. Like Brady's a great quarterback, but I do not think his line gets as much credit as they deserve because Brady
Oh
did
yeah.
not. He rarely got hit in the playoffs.
Well, I would
Um,
say, but that's also part of Brady's. If you notice, Tom Brady always did things like if the pocket was breaking down, he just drops.
yeah,
If
yeah,
he minimizes as much bodily contact as he could possible. He wasn't the type of guy, or he would on occasion stand through a hit to make a throw. But
yeah.
you notice after that point, if people weren't getting open, Brady just goes down to the ground, or if he tries to run, I mean,
Please don't run, Brady. Please don't run, Brady. Man, let me tell you something. If Brady was not a quarterback, and that man said, "No, I played football. I played, 23, 24 years in the league." Yeah, right. Come on, run an out route for me. Get your ass out of here, man. I mean, that's all I picture Brady. Brady was very uncoordinated. One of the, but he has one of the best stories though, because he had an awful, draft
40.
day, really, just
Yeah.
awful. But he's a dog though. But I love your perspective on that one. Still staying in sports. I mean, still staying in football. I want to ask who is, and that's it's still kind of early in the season. Who's the team right now to beat, and who's that squad that you're like, ooh, they might got a chance making it into the big game. Like any squads kind of catch your attention during this season?
AFC obviously is still the Chiefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chiefs are you gotta until you beat the king, you don't get the title, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
no matter how good the Dolphins look, no matter how good all these other teams in the AFC look, when it comes down to it, most of us, if like when you look at the betting odds, if you're going to an AFC championship game and you have to pick 2 teams, look, one team got that dude Mahomes on him. I can't.
Yeah.
And look, obviously, football is a two-sided game, but I believe as if you have to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, he's just going to outscore you anyway. So
Yeah.
it's one of those
Yeah.
things that I think AFC, the Chiefs are still that team. The Dolphins are a team that are respectable. They're having a good start to the season, of course. I think
Mm-hmm.
Tua's done a great job, especially after the rough season he had last year due
Yeah.
to all the concussions. Pretty much, he was unplayable to a point last season. So I think that the Dolphins have been really good. And the NFC has been way more interesting because I think that it's one of those things where records can be deceiving. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the Eagles' record is a bit deceiving as a 5-1 team because there's been a couple of wins here and there that if you watch the Eagles, you're like,
It was a little ugly. It was an ugly win. It wasn't like a
yeah,
good solid win. Yeah.
yeah, you played down to your competition, obviously, in some of those games for the Eagles, and then you just managed to win. I think
Mm-hmm.
the 49ers are the clear team. I mean, even though the 49ers had a horrible loss, right? This past week, they
Mm-hmm.
had a terrible loss, but I think the 49ers have been the most complete team in the NFC that you look from top to bottom, offense, defense, with Debo Samuel, with Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, all those George Kittle, and all those
Gotcha.
other guys on the team. They're the most top to bottom, well-rounded team in the NFC. But the Lions are also. I just put out a video today about the Lions too, talking about them. But the Lions are a team that are also really good. They're a team that they have a top 10 defense on both points and yards. Their offense, I think, is fourth in both yardage and scoring.
Mm.
and they're playing really well behind Jared Goff. And I think it's one of those things that at the time when the Rams had Jared Goff, obviously I'm a Rams fan, all the LA stuff I got in here, but at the time when the Rams traded Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, it was
Mhm.
because Jared Goff was not the quarterback that was right for that team at the time to win, to lead
Mm.
a team to win the Super Bowl. They got to the Super Bowl, but the leading force of that Super Bowl or of that team that got to the Super Bowl under Jared Goff was Todd Gurley, right?
Yeah.
He was the
Yeah.
offensive player of the year. A lot of that offense was formulated around Todd Gurley and play action. Jared Goff can make the throws, but when you needed those moments where it was evident the Rams were not going to be running the football, we just need you to go and win the game.
Mhm.
Goff was lacking in those instances, right? So you went and got a guy that could do that. Now I think Goff has improved and evolved to a point where he could possibly be that type of guy for the Detroit Lions, and they have ample weapons to support him in that role too.
Absolutely, absolutely. No,
So yeah.
I like that, man. I like that. Before we come out of football, there's a name that I have to bring up because it was brought in the conversation at the time of potential candidates to replace Aaron Rodgers. Colin Kaepernick.
Mhm.
Now, I got, I got grace and I got some heat from some of my friends and, just people that tune in because on our radio show I host, a weekly radio show I host, I basically, brought up, hey, look, I'm going to give you my thoughts on why it's the NFL comeback that will never happen. It's nothing to, bash Colin Kaepernick. I'm all in. I'm always been a supporter of Colin Kaepernick. But I just think 35 years old, hasn't played since 2016, 2013, maybe. It's been a long time since he's been in the league, any form of competitive contact sports. And like I said, 35-year-old. Then I also look on the business side as if I was a team owner, the first thing we're going to look on, what can we do to help keep seats in our stadiums, help pack them up? Because at the end of the day, people are going to have their views of what they thought of what they think of Colin Kaepernick,
Yeah.
and people are still in support, and there's people that still don't like him. And if they see a drop in their seats, they're gonna be like, "Ooh, it's gonna be a gamble if we do sign him." So
Yeah.
I think it's so much baggage that's against him that I think that it's always just a conversation that can always between analysts and just a story that can always bring up. I wish he would have been back in the league because, in my opinion, his last couple of years in the NFL wasn't awful. It wasn't bad. He still could easily, but we all know kind of what occurred, and at the end of the day, it blackballed him. He was blackballed, and what's your take on Colin Kaepernick if it's anywhere near a possibility of him trying to make a comeback to professional football?
Nah, he's done. It's toast. The minute that him and the NFL reached that settlement, it was done. There was no chance that he was going to come back in the NFL. If he would have kept pursuing that case against the NFL to prove that he
Mm-hmm.
was blackballed, then there was a higher chance of it then. Granted, he would have pissed off a lot of NFL owners, of course,
Yeah.
but you would have proved wrongdoing and I guess collusion to some degree of them trying to keep
Mm-hmm.
you out of the league. Pretty much a handshake agreement between all the owners that they were not going to sign you. So for most of us now, we're inferring that it happened, but when he settled with them, it kind of shored up that front.
It,
So I don't think there's no chance of it happening. And I credit people that want it to happen, but
yeah.
let's be real. I mean, if your team said they were going to go sign Matt Flynn tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when was the last time Matt Flynn signed up or played NFL football? Now, I guarantee you, probably was more recent than Colin Kaepernick, probably,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it probably falls in line with a similar time frame, right? So at some point, and and I don't think it's easy to just like imagine a player who even if they were playing solid at the time when they stopped playing. Imagine a guy who stopped playing NBA basketball for 10 years, tries to just jump back in today's the NBA is 10 years ago. The NBA is
It's
vastly
so
different than what
different.
it is. Same thing for the NFL. The NFL is not the same league it was 10 years ago from what it is today. Now NFL teams are way more prepared for mobile quarterbacks. NFL teams are way more prepared. I remember there was a point. Remember the point when the zone read had every NFL defense in a just they didn't know what to do if a quarterback was going to hand it off or run it himself. It had NFL defenses like defensive ends were in the torture chamber,
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And now you're much more prepared for it. I mean, I think that the NFL has evolved to degrees, and the quarterbacks have evolved with it.
Yeah.
And granted, we haven't had the chance to see if Cap has evolved, but at the time of his final years in the league, he was on the decline. He
Yeah.
wasn't playing as high as he was when he led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. So I think
Mhm.
those are factors you take into account. And now you're saying 10 years later, I don't know.
Well, and then too with the defense,
It might not
defensive
even be,
ends now.
to be credit. It might not even be 10 years, but like just so many
Well,
years
it's
later,
close to it. It's definitely it's been
yeah,
close to it because I mean we're talking like 2 years after he played in the Super Bowl. I think 2 years after he was in the Super Bowl was when all that happened. If I'm not mistaken, when the Ravens when Joe Flacco won a ring. So
yeah,
it was a while ago. It was a while ago. But like you mentioned too, defensive ends now are literally in the exact same shape as damn near a wide receiver or a tight end. Like I mean, they're slender. They're more slender now. They're still big, but they're cut and they're more
yeah,
athletic than the maybe the one with a little pudge in it. It's different. It's there are
yeah.
different athletes right now. But no, I appreciate your response with that, man, because that's just something that's always gonna continue to come out year by year by year, and I don't think it will ever end. But I know when I saw that in the mix of when they were talking about candidates for QB, I'm like, oh, hold up, we got to talk about this. We got to say something. But I truly appreciate it, Brendan.
I think
Okay, man. Mhm.
so. The last time he literally played was 2016. That was the last time he played. So that's 7 years ago. That's tough, dude. And his last year when he played, he threw 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, had a completion percentage around 59.2, 2,241 yards in 12 games, and his record as a starting quarterback was 1-10. That's tough. That's tough.
And what I guess what kind of irks me a little bit is the fact that there are so many. Not granted, like, hey, look, I understand. Hey, it's nothing like playing in the NFL. That's the top tier of professional football. That's the mecca that you want to play on. But if you really, really, really missed the game, because I uh, read or saw on my phone that the XFL Dwayne Johnson and his peoples had a meeting with I think Colin Kaepernick's agents about maybe if he wants to join the XFL, because there's been a quite of a handful of guys that has graduated from there, succeeded, went on in the pros.
Yeah.
Dwayne said most likely that will never happen. So which tells me I'm like, okay, it's not a passion for the game, it's a money thing. Colin, again, you can't you can't think to make almost 20 million in a developmental league. I mean, you have the CFL, you have so many leagues, and you never try to participate in any of them. It's like I don't know, man. And I'm not gonna lie, I was too one of those ones that was like a little critical when he had the NFL tryout or the NFL like workout in Atlanta, and then all the coaches and staffs is like, okay, we're here at the arena. We're Colin at. Oh, Colin's at another. He moved it last minute. I just and I don't know what was I gotta look into more what was the reason behind that. But it's like, dude, it's like if this was
Yeah.
your last big break, like why? It's just I think he didn't do anything to help his situation trying to
Yeah.
get back in the league.
There
And
was a
like you said,
No, go ahead. Finish your
I was
point.
just
Yeah.
gonna say, like like you said, he sued the NFL. When have you ever gone back to a job that you sued and got a settlement, got some money out of them, and said, I think I want to come back work for y'all?
Yeah. I think when you have a QBR, and mind you, I think QBR is graded out of 100, and in your
Mm-hmm.
last season, your QBR was at 49, and that's a tough sell. I think the a lot of people remember when you think of Colin Kaepernick and as a football player, you remember the Super Bowl performance. But then when
Yeah,
you actually look at what was there in the last few seasons, and I mean that last season wasn't. I mean, 16 touchdowns to 4 interceptions isn't bad. But when you look at the QBR in terms of accuracy, you look at the team's record. That's just not an NFL owner isn't going to be, and because of the baggage that comes with it, it's not only
yeah,
just that; it's because of the baggage that comes with it. He could easily be able to perform, but is he so good that warrants the baggage that you are going to just take that on versus maybe just saying we'll just deal with the current situation? And
yeah,
from a lot of NFL owners, whether right or wrong, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just that's the reality of the business as it
yeah.
is.
Absolutely, man.
You know,
Absolutely. Look, want to move on before I let you go, man. I want to move on quick to basketball because I think the biggest story that people are still talking about is the fact that Damian Lillard is now officially a Milwaukee Buck. He has a new home, which I don't think, at least for me, I never pictured him ever leaving Portland because I think at the time he wasn't a big fan of like kind of like the super PAC teams, and he's like, no, either they got to come here to Portland. I'm never leaving Portland. I want to get a ring here in Portland, so on and so on. He's now with the Greek Freak, man. Give us your take on this, man, because this is it's still unheard of because they're both mean weapons. I mean, like again, one of my favorite players is Damian Lillard as well as
Yeah.
Antetokounmpo. So it's crazy. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I would say they probably are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference alongside the Celtics. Obviously, the Celtics being able to land Drew Holiday is probably not what the Bucks wanted at all. And
Mm,
that was not something the Bucks in any dimension of the universe would have wanted when they traded him to Portland. But that's the situation they're in. But I think that it's easily the two teams that you need. The Bucks have the best player in the conference in Giannis Antetokounmpo,
mm-hmm.
and then you have the Celtics have the second best player in Jason Tatum, and then the Bucks have, or I guess people might argue Jason Tatum or Joel Embiid, whoever you prefer, but and maybe Jimmy Butler, whoever people.
I'm a Knicks guy, so it's just it's not in my religion to root for any Celtics. So I'm sorry, I'm biased on that.
I feel that. I'm a Laker fan, so you know where I'm coming from. But and then you have another top 20, top 15 player in Damian Lillard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think from the outlook of that team, how their offense just leveled up incredibly. Now there were so many times and that we saw even in their championship run that you got somewhat like the Bucks would win when they got those superstar or all-star level performances from Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. You either
Mm-hmm.
needed one of the two. You knew Giannis was always going to show up. You always needed one of the other two to show up. Now you know for a fact you have an all-star guy that's going to show up all the time next to Giannis. Yes, your
Mm-hmm.
defense takes a step back, but what you make up for in offense and that dependability, you can't measure that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giannis's job is going to get so much easier. Giannis is going to get so many easy looks because Damian Lillard, not to the degree of Steph Curry, but when Damian Lillard passes half court, he's a threat. And teams are going to, and in Portland, they were doubling him and worrying about his ability to shoot the ball. Now you're telling me he has Chris Middleton on another wing. He has Giannis in the paint, and then he has Brook Lopez on a wing, likely spotting up in the corner or somewhere to shoot. And a lot of those times are going to be pick and rolls between him and Giannis. Dude, that's going to be when you
Well,
think of this, it's going to be nuts.
and then on top of that, I mean, it wasn't too long ago Milwaukee won an NBA Finals. I mean, what was that?
Yeah,
Just like 3-4 years ago.
yeah.
So it's just like it was very soon. So I'm excited for this because I've always loved to see guys that are amazing players, humble cats, right? I'm like, okay, they it's time for them to get that ring. Like I will say this, like I've always been a fan of CP3, Chris Paul, and the fact that he's now, and I'm trying to see how that's going to work though because I didn't even know he had went on to another squad. When I saw him wearing Golden State, I thought it was like a prank. Like I'm like, what's he wearing this for? And so seeing him in Golden State, I'm I mean, I know he's not starting. But do you think this gives him a stronger chance of possibly getting that ring just one last time? Because Chris Paul's been playing for about 15, 16 years. I mean, he's been in the league for a long time. Do you think his chances are very, very close to possibly getting that ring that he always wanted?
This is probably the best situation he's had.
Mm,
He doesn't have to be the best player on this team, and
mm,
that's probably the biggest thing. And every stop CP3 was in, the teams were built in a way where he always had to be. And granted, he was good enough that he should have been one of the best players, right?
mm,
But I think here the player he's playing with is so good that he can play a whatever role they utilize him in. He can kind of ride off of the coat. He doesn't need to be there every single game, whatever the case might be, because of his age and how his body is now. He's not going to be able to play anywhere close to, or at least 82 games. Let me just say that. I don't know how many games he'll play, but now having a guy like Steph Curry you can play off of, having a guy like Draymond Green, who's also a very smart, high defensive IQ, offensive IQ guy as well. And then
mm.
Klay Thompson as well as another shooter in the wing. And then they have talented guys like Jonathan Kuminga and so on that roster, and Andrew Wiggins. I think that it's one of the best talented teams he's had dating back to his Clippers teams. And
Mm-hmm.
I think those Clippers teams, for many people, felt like they were disappointments of because they didn't reach the heights of what people envisioned for him, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and so on. And the James Harden teams, those Rockets teams, they were good teams. And I think there was one year there that they definitely had a chance to knock out Golden State if it wasn't for Chris Paul's hamstring.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this is probably the best situation he's been in from a talent perspective. Actually, maybe I'm not giving enough credit to the Suns because those
I
Suns
was
team are pretty good. I mean, they got to the
that,
finals.
they made it close, but like you said though, you made a good point. He still was that. I mean, he was that guy. He might have been second, on
Yeah,
that because I believe they had Devin Booker, so he was
yeah. I mean,
second, but still like
he
they
needed
were
to
still
be one of the.
relying on there. Yeah, they were
Yeah,
still relying on Chris Paul, and at that age, it's like, whew, I'm gonna need some help this time, yo.
yeah,
I need to sit down just for a few minutes.
yeah.
You mentioned James Harden, who James. I'm not gonna lie. There's some guys that just irk me. That really just get on under my skin in the NBA, and James is one of them. Westbrook is one of them. Russell Westbrook, hell of a player, but it's just something that I don't know. It's just something that bugs me about. And like now you're seeing James Harden saying basically, "Hey, I'm not coming back to Philly. I would have loved to make Philly the squad I win a championship." I mean, what's up with James, man? I don't even know where he was signed to, but do you think James is just like, "Hey, look, I'm in it to, it's all about me." Like, I mean, what's your take on James Harden?
I think so. He's still on Philly. They haven't agreed to trade him anywhere. But I think I was gonna make an analogy, but I don't know if it's perfect, and I don't want to make your audience mad, so I won't do it. But
Man, make him mad. Make him mad. Look, we have people of all backgrounds here.
I don't want to make any female listeners mad because I love I
Oh,
love the ladies, obviously. But what I was gonna say is like James Harden's like a beautiful girl who her beauty has gotten her very far in a lot of things that she does, right? But
mm-hmm,
at some point, when you start to have a reputation for your beauty and the substance starts to lack, yeah, your
mm,
beauty, people still acknowledge, like, yeah, you're a beautiful person, but there's no substance there. So then
mm,
she
mm,
starts to realize, hey, I'm not getting the same privileges I was getting earlier in when I was younger, or whatever the case might be, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So because the beauty now, as you age, your beauty's starting to change, right?
mm-hmm.
So I think that James Harden is at that stage where, yes, there's been flashes there where you're like, damn, James, you look just as good as you used to look, man. Gosh damn. Like, I'll pay you a super max tomorrow. But then there's also moments where you've been like, what happened to James Harden? Right? Where
Yeah,
did James
yeah.
Harden go? I see Casper more than I've seen James Harden in the last like week of
Ah!
basketball. So there's moments you have like that. And when a team is gauging, do we want to tie X amount of our salary cap? I mean, a super max contract is a tough thing to pay a guy, and even let alone a max, right?
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
you're you're expecting to pay that guy for years. And James Harden is not some 20-year-old. He's in his early 30s at this point in his career, and
Mm-hmm,
you've seen it. James Harden doesn't have the same quick step that he used to have with the Rockets when he was the scoring champion, or when he was able to
mm-hmm,
lead teams to the Western Conference Finals. You're starting to see that, and I think that now when you're seeing the holding out for the trade requests and stuff like that, the team that's been in that conversation has been the Clippers. But even they're probably sitting there like, well, we don't want to give up a guy like uh I'm Terrence Mann, because of the fact that, I mean, he's a young guy. We need another young player that's a good player, even in the era of Kawhi and Paul George. We don't want
mm-hmm.
to give that up for a guy like James Harden. Like, we don't know what we're gonna get in return. I mean, he puts James Harden has had really good regular seasons, but when you get to the playoffs and you have a 40-point game here, then Joel Embiid comes back, you look like a pedestrian the next game. Then
Yeah.
you put up another 40-point game, and then you disappear the next few games. It's like, bro, what are we doing?
And I
And
mean, in a
yeah,
sense too, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but one
no,
thing
you're
I'll
good.
catch just from the difference between like football and basketball, I would say basketball they invest a lot more into youth than they do experience. Like, I mean, if you are a young guy that is sharp, that is that is balling, oh, they're gonna keep more eyes on you than they are a veteran. I like what in a sense of like in football they still look at experience more than youth, even though they don't want you too old, but it's like, okay, we rather have some a good chunk of experience to sign you on rather than somebody that's young in the game, because if we get somebody just young and spry, they liable to make some mistakes, make some costly penalties, things and that and the other. In basketball, it's different because it's like it's a fast pace. I mean, you look at the exhaustion they're always doing. It's a four quarter game. It's different in basketball.
I would say basketball too is different because one player can have so much of an impact on the determination of how a game plays out. So when
True,
you have a
true.
young player, you can invest. You want to invest more in them, especially if you see they have talent, because they
Mm-hmm.
can directly change the fortunes of your franchise.
Mm.
Whereas in football, obviously, 52-man roster, you're not going to have a young guy that comes in. Your leash is much shorter because you have so many more players that are accountable for the success of your team. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
basketball, that one player can be the change. So yeah, it definitely is a different kind of dichotomy. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for James Harden's case, especially when you've gone in the last 3 years, James Harden has requested a trade now from Houston to Brooklyn to Philly, right? And so when you've requested a trade in the last 3-4 years from each place you've landed at, and especially how he initially got out of Houston, he pretty much became a cancer in the locker room. James
I
Harden,
was just, yep,
he
yep.
showed up out of shape in Houston. I mean, that's where they got the fat suit meme from. Like people when he requested the trade out of Philly, I'm seeing memes on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, and people are, the thing where Batman goes into the Batcave and he looks at his bat suit like, oh, I got to put on the trade. People had that James Harden was stepping into the closet, getting out the fat suit. I'm like, dude, that's not that. The
The
fact
internet will always be undefeated. Let's just be
it
honest. The
always
internet will always be undefeated.
the fact that James Harden has a reputation that, look, it's time to bust out the fat suit. That's not a good look,
It's
you
not a
know.
good look at all.
Yeah, so that's one of those things. So general managers, they see that stuff too. They all see these things. So it's not only fans and like people like us we are talking about it. They all see it, right? So they're sitting
Mm-hmm.
there like, is this dude going to show up in shape and ready to go in the season and going
Mm.
to be able to finish out the season? They're asking themselves those same questions. So I don't know.
It's but it's very true though, because again, to me, I think it lowers to ratings because people don't want to see, in a sense, not calling him the villain, but it's like, okay, this guy's the guy that's always whining, saying, I don't like it here, let me trade. I don't like it here, I want to trade. I don't like. That's not appealing to viewership. It's like, I mean, yeah, it's a good story, but I spoke to some matter of fact, the station where I'm at, uh two of the personalities are from Philadelphia, and they like, do not talk to me about James
James
Harden. I don't
Harden.
want to talk about it. Like, he got so. If I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I ain't mean to get offended, but they are serious about that.
But
Uh,
also, let me just inside basketball here, just from a
mm,
management level, the owners don't like it either. Owners hate that. I mean, think about it. If you're an NBA owner, I mean, just imagine this perception, right?
mm-hmm,
Anytime your employee gets disgruntled, you're worried that they're going to try and just force their way out. Imagine you're in a relationship with somebody, and every single time something doesn't go exactly how they like it, or whatever the case might be, they've proven that they have a track record of forcing their way out of it. Yeah, you can make the case. Brooklyn, I understand, right? Brooklyn was a bit crazy with all this stuff going on around Brooklyn. I'm not even going to get into it, the Kyrie and Kevin Durant stuff,
mm-hmm,
and the overall organization that they had there. The Brooklyn stuff was kind of crazy.
mm-hmm.
What he did in Houston for an organization that had done everything to kind of pertain to him, to give him all his wants and demands, for
They
you to
gave him the
show up,
red carpet.
yeah, and for you to have John Wall show up there, for you to blatantly on the court showed displeasure in playing with this other player and the teammates you had around you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like what Damian Lillard and James Harden are incomparable, right?
Absolutely, I
Because
totally agree.
Damian Lillard spent years in if James Harden would have kind of waited out whatever would have happened in Houston. I mean, Houston wasn't trading him, so I guess that's how he felt. That was the only recourse he had.
Mm-hmm.
But if he would have played it out how Dame played it out to some degree, even though I don't think people probably wouldn't say Dame handled it all perfectly either. I mean, subjective, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that the image of James Harden would be a lot different than it is now, because now it's like, dude, you're just a crybaby that's gone from place to place and requested a trade. Even though you can make arguments that in each place, maybe he had an argument as to why he wanted to leave,
Yeah.
the image gets changed because of how you did it. And now you're in a situation where you're playing with the reigning MVP and you're requesting a trade. Yes, Daryl Morey might have made a promise, and apparently that's James Harden's issue with Daryl Morey right now, is that he made a promise to him. I'm guessing about because James Harden and and this is in fairness, as I guess to the best of our journalistic ability, we have to give credit in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
James Harden took a pay cut the year before, or this prior season. He could have signed a contract that essentially would have given him more money going into
Mhm.
this free agency. He could have signed a deal. He could have opted into his contract that he previously had, but
Mhm.
instead he took a pay cut so they could sign guys like PJ Tucker and bring on other guys that were going to help them try and make a championship run. So I will give him
Yeah.
that credit. He did those things, and that people don't bring those things up enough when they're talking about James Harden. But when you do these type of things, and this is the most recent memory people have of you, it muddies the waters, and that's what we're
Yeah.
seeing now with how James Harden is getting perceived by fans and media alike.
Because really, pay cuts is the smartest thing you can do as a player. Because again, as a Knicks fan, when Julius Randle took a pay cut and we brought in a few pieces. I mean, I think during that season we made it pretty far in the playoffs. But once again, I've always said, if you a Knicks fan, you already know we are not a fourth quarter team. I'm gonna tell you this right now. We can always get you all hyped up in the first half. We're like, oh, we got this, we got this. But be careful, because that second half is when it makes you want to pull your hair out. I mean, I even remember hearing Fat Joe talk about the same thing. I'm like, oh, so this is just a Knicks fan thing. We all know this, right? I'm not the only one that caught that. But
Well, real quick. So I will say I want to add on to that point real quick,
Mhm.
because you did say you appreciated Julius Randle. He took a pay cut.
Yeah.
Now think about it this way, right?
Mm.
Because sports is the only profession where we expect the employees to take pay cuts to be able to bring in other employees of quality and ability standard. Imagine if your boss came to you, said, "Hey, Arrington, we need you to take a reduction of 20% of your salary
Mm.
to bring in another high value guy that we're going to bring in to be able to perform at a high level to make the company perform as best as it can."
Mhm.
For you, you're like, what the hell that got to do with me?
That's
Right?
true.
Right?
That's very true. That's very true. I think it's
Sport,
always. Oh no, what were you gonna say, Brendan?
no,
My
no,
bad.
no, you're good. I was gonna say sports is the only profession where we expect the players to be willing to take pay cuts to accommodate other players, so our team has the best chance to win. So when a
Yeah.
guy takes a pay cut, I like to highlight it because it is a big deal. I mean, it's
Mhm.
even though they make a lot of money, they deal with a lot that warrants that pay, and they go through a lot that warrants that type of compensation. So
Mhm.
I always try to flip it that way so people just get how much of a big deal it is when players
No,
take
no,
pay
you
cuts.
bring some great points, a great example of that, because but I hear like Steven Jackson had made a post recently saying, if you're in it for more on the money side and not trying to win a championship. I forgot, he called him some explicit word. I can't even remember what he called him, but he just said, dude, it's all about the ring, it's all about that. But in all honesty, it's like, is the question will be, okay, is every player in the NBA just really wanting it for the ring or for the success, the fame, the money? I mean, like you
Everybody's goals
mentioned,
is different. Yeah.
exactly, these supermax contracts. I mean, they can retire billionaires. Like, they literally are making almost 200 million a year. Like, literally, oh no, not 200, I'm sorry, but like 30 million a year, which is crazy. I used to think baseball was always, where people make that kind of money, but now the basketball is making, that's like, I still can't
Nuts.
imagine it.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's crazy. Uh uh let Before I let you go, Phoenix has Bradley Beal,
Kevin
Kevin
Durant.
Durant, Devin Booker. Is that a team that people should also kind of keep eyes on? Because it's like, hey, look, Bradley Beal ain't no slump either. Like, Bradley, he lasted in Washington way too long, way too
Yeah,
long.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he, again, I think he was another one of those like humble guys that said, no, look, I want to, continue to stick it out here. If you want to bring some guys to me, let's do so. But he's, I think this is the third team he's played for in his whole entire career. So do you think Phoenix is a squad that people should also kind of keep tabs on with the weapons that they have now?
Yes. Any team that Kevin Durant is on, you keep your eyes on without question. I mean, that's an unspoken rule, right?
Respected answer. Respected answer.
So Phoenix is going to be a team, let alone you throw in Devin Booker, you throw in Bradley Beal into the equation. Of course, you're going to
Mhm.
keep your eyes on Phoenix. The Western Conference as a whole has become so much more difficult than it was a
Mm,
year ago, even 2 years ago, right? You add Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks. Bradley Beal comes west side to the Phoenix Suns. Kevin Durant goes west side to the Phoenix Suns, right? And
mm,
even though we only got a small glimpse of what that looked like last year, they didn't really get that many games to play with each other, so it was kind of just a test run for them. And for them to even push the Nuggets to what, 6 games
mhm,
speaks
mhm,
to speaks to how talented that team was. I mean, Devin Booker pretty much went to unprecedented historic scoring heights for them to even be competitive in that
for
series. So now when they trade DeAndre Ayton and they bring in some depth to help with that team, which is what they needed, I think that the outlook on Phoenix is much more bright than it would have initially been if it was just that that trio, and then you have DeAndre Ayton there. So you always got to keep tabs on Phoenix, but then you also got to keep tabs on the reigning champs and the Nuggets, and then LeBron and Anthony Davis as well. So we'll see.
Man, I like it. I like it. Look, once again, Brendan, I could talk with you for days, man. This is just, it's like a conversation I don't want to end. Y'all, look, Brendan and I, we're gonna talk a little bit after the show, man. But I hope y'all enjoyed this conversation here on the Arrington Gavin podcast. Again, dropping new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time via podcast. So wherever you get your podcasts, again, you can tune into the Arrington Gavin podcast. Thank you for those who support. And hey, for those who are new to the show, be sure to check out past episodes as well as on my YouTube channel, where you can tune into new episodes at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our Smooth Club Media. So subscribe, hit the like. We truly appreciate that. And also, every Sunday, tune into my radio show In Your City, hosted by yours truly, along with my good friends, comedian Ciroc Fox and hustle queen herself, Miss Michelle Young. What did I say? Sundays, 12 p.m. WNSB 91.1 FM. No worries if you're not in the Hampton Roads area and you can't turn that radio dial to WNSB. You can listen live online at WNSB.org, or also download the free app, WNSB app. Look, y'all, I try to remember all my notes without even looking at them. So yes, they have an app, so tune into that. Once again, I hope y'all enjoyed. Mr. Brendan Abban, before we let you go, man, how can people continue to support? Please throw your socials, all that great stuff. Continue to support you. How can we stay tuned with you?
Yeah, you can follow KBR Sports on Instagram. You can it's pretty much just literally KBR Sports is the handle. And then on Twitter at KBR_sports. And you can follow myself at Brendan Abban at is BrendanAbban. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, on YouTube as well with KBR Sports, and then on TikTok. I know it's weird. Different socials, it's different things, but Instagram it's both, and then on TikTok it's Brendan Abban, and then Twitter you have both Brendan Abban and KBR Sports. So, and the YouTube channel, I post YouTube videos pretty much. I post YouTube shorts pretty much every day, and I post one main channel video every week for the most part. Well, depending on what video I'm making, because sometimes I write a lot of big long form scripted videos for the most part. That I think the most recent video I just did was breaking down why Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless broke up. Funny enough, what we were talking about that. Yeah, because when you said you hadn't watched Undisputed that much since that happened, I'm in the same boat. The chemistry is not the same. I think Skip and Shannon had something special, and then you saw when that changed. So that's pretty much what my latest video, the long form video, covers on the channel. So if you guys want to check that out, I would definitely appreciate that.
Please do. And look, we have to have a part 2, man, because we got to speak on that. That's a great conversation that I definitely would love to get in touch with you about. But Brendan, thank you so much, boss. Again, this is not the first or last time you'll be on this show. I want you continue to have you on, man. You're always welcome. And again, I truly appreciate it. Y'all stay blessed. Again, I hope y'all enjoyed another great edition of the Arrington Gavin podcast. We out. Hit my music.